The garden wasn't supposed to be there. Marcus had worked as a security guard at Hartwell Estate for 3 years. He knew every hallway, every locked door, every corner of the sprawling property. But on that cold November afternoon, while doing his usual rounds near the east wing, he heard something that made him stop crying. Soft, broken, like someone trying hard not to be heard. He followed the sound past the old stone wall covered in ivy. That's when he saw in a narrow gap between 2 sections of the wall, barely wide enough to slip through. He'd walked past this spot 100 times and never noticed it. Before, the crying grew louder. Marcus squeezed through the opening. On the other side, he found himself in a small, hidden garden. Wild roses climbed over crumbling benches. Moss covered the stone path. In the center, beneath a twisted oak tree, sat a young woman with her face buried in her hands. She wore a pale blue dress, now dirt-stained at the hem. Her shoulders shook with each sob. "Miss," Marcus called softly. "Are you all right?" The woman's head snapped up. Her eyes were red and swollen. For a moment, she looked terrified, like a deer caught in headlights. Then recognition seemed to flash across her face. "Please," she whispered, "please don't tell anyone I'm here." Marcus recognized her immediately. Kate Hartwell, the youngest daughter of the estate's owner. He'd seen her in photographs throughout the main house, smiling, radiant, always surrounded by family at charity events and dinner parties. But the woman in front of him now looked nothing like those pictures. Her hands were shaking. There was a fresh bruise on her wrist, barely visible beneath her sleeve. "Miss Hartwell, what happened?" Marcus took a careful step closer. "Are you hurt?" Kate stood quickly, brushing tears from her cheeks. "I'm fine. I needed to be alone." But her voice cracked on the last word. And when she turned to leave, Marcus saw her wince in pain. "Please wait," he said gently. "At least let me help you back to the house." "No." The word came out sharp, almost panicked. Kate looked at him with desperate eyes. "I can't go back there. Not yet. Not until she stopped herself." Her jaw clenched. Fresh tears spilled down her face. Marcus had been trained not to get involved in family matters. His job was simple: patrol the grounds, report anything unusual, stay professional. But standing there in that hidden garden, watching this young woman fall apart, something in him shifted. "How long have you been coming here?" he asked quietly. Kate's expression softened slightly. She sank back onto the bench. "Since I was 12. My mother showed me this place. She said it was built by my great-grandmother's secret spot where she could escape when the world became too much." "Your mother?" "She died 6 years ago." Kate's voice was barely a whisper now. "This garden was our special place. No one else in the family knows it exists." Marcus sat down on the opposite end of the bench, keeping a respectful distance. The autumn wind rustled through the oak tree above them. Somewhere in the distance, a door slammed. Kate flinched at the sound. "Miss Hartwell," Marcus said carefully, "who are you hiding from?" She looked at him for a long moment. Her lips trembled. Then, just as she opened her mouth to answer, they both heard it. Footsteps, heavy and deliberate. "Coming closer!" And a man's voice, cold and commanding, calling through the estate grounds. "Kate, where are you?" "We need to finish our conversation." Kate's face went white. She grabbed Marcus's arm, her fingernails digging into his sleeve. "Please," she breathed, "don't let him find me here." Before Marcus could respond, the footsteps grew louder, closer. Whoever was looking for Kate was heading straight toward the hidden garden. And if you want to see what happens next, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Because this story takes a turn no one saw coming. Marcus made a split-second decision. He stood and positioned himself between Kate and the garden entrance, blocking the narrow gap in the wall. "Stay quiet," he whispered. "Let me handle this." The footsteps stopped just outside. Through the ivy-covered opening, Marcus could see the shadow of a man tall. Broad-shouldered, wearing an expensive suit guard. The voice barked. "Have you seen Miss Hartwell?" Marcus recognized him immediately. David Ashford, Kate's older cousin. He'd been living at the estate for the past year. supposedly helping manage the family's business affairs after Kate's father fell ill. Marcus had never liked him. There was something cold in the way Ashford looked at people, like they were objects to be used rather than human beings. "No, sir," Marcus called back, keeping his voice steady. "I haven't seen her on this side of the property." Silence. "Long and heavy? You're certain?" Ashford's tone sharpened. "I was told she came this direction. I've been patrolling here for the past 20 minutes. No sign of her." More silence. Marcus could feel Kate trembling behind him, her breathing shallow and panicked. He didn't dare turn around. Finally, Ashford spoke again. "If you see her, radio it in immediately. The family is concerned about her. State of mind lately? She's been under significant stress. We wouldn't want her to do something ... regrettable." The word sent a chill down Marcus's spine. It wasn't what Ashford said. It was how he said it. Like a threat wrapped in concern. "Understood, sir." The shadow moved away. The footsteps faded into the distance. Marcus waited a full minute before turning around. Kate had collapsed onto the bench, her hands covering her face. She was shaking so hard her teeth were chattering. "He's gone," Marcus said gently. "But Miss Hartwell, you need to tell me what's going on." Kate looked up at him. Her eyes were hollow, defeated. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you. Try me." She took a shaky breath. "My father is dying. Lung cancer. He has maybe 3 months left. And when he dies, everything's the estate, the business, the family fortune, all goes into a trust. Half to me, half to my older brother James." "That doesn't sound like a problem." "It isn't. The problem is David." Kate's voice dropped to barely a whisper. 6 months ago, he convinced my father to sign papers, making him the trustee. He said it was to protect the family's interests. But ever since then, he's been controlling everything. My father's medical care, the household staff, the finances. She stood and paced across the small garden, wrapping her arms around herself. 2 weeks ago, I found documents in David's office. Legal papers. They would transfer full control of the trust to him if anything happened to both me and James before the estate was settled. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying my brother died 3 days ago." The words hung in the air like a knife. "The family was told it was a car accident," Kate continued, her voice breaking. "James lost control on a mountain road, went over the edge. But James was an experienced driver. He'd driven that road 1,000 times. She turned to face Marcus, tears streaming down her face. "I don't think it was an accident. Did you go to the police?" "With what?" "Suspicions? A feeling? David has connections everywhere. The local police chief plays golf with him twice a month." Kate laughed bitterly. "And everyone thinks I'm unstable, that I'm not handling my father's illness well. David's been very careful to plant that narrative." Marcus thought about Ashford's words just moments ago. State of mind? Stress? Something regrettable? "Today at lunch," Kate went on, "David pulled me aside. He said we needed to discuss my future and some papers I needed to sign. When I refused, he grabbed my wrist." She pulled up her sleeve, revealing the bruise Marcus had noticed earlier. "He told me I was making things difficult, that I should be more cooperative like James was." Like James was?" Marcus repeated slowly. "Before he died?" Kate nodded. "That's when I ran. I didn't know where else to go. This garden, it's the only place I feel safe anymore." Marcus ran a hand over his face. This was beyond anything he'd been trained for. He was a security guard, not a detective, not a bodyguard. But looking at Kate standing there in her dirt-stained dress, terrified and alone, he knew he couldn't just walk away. "Kay," he said finally, "we need to get you somewhere safe. Do you have anyone you trust? Anyone outside the family?" Kate thought for a moment. "My father's lawyer, Gerald Morrison. He's been with the family for 30 years. He handled my mother's estate. If anyone would believe me, it's him. Can you call him?" "My phone, David took it this morning. Said he was having it serviced." Kate's voice was bitter. "I haven't been able to contact anyone outside the estate all day." Marcus pulled out his own phone. "Use mine. Call Morrison. Set up a meeting somewhere away from here." Kate took the phone with shaking hands. But just as she started to dial, they both heard something that made their blood run cold. The sound of multiple footsteps and voices. At least 3 men, maybe more, spreading out across the grounds. "Find her," Ashford's voice rang out. "Search everywhere. The greenhouse, the stables, the old chapel." She couldn't have gone far. And the search party was getting closer with every passing second. Marcus's mind raced. The hidden garden only had one entrance, the narrow gap they'd come through. If Ashford's men found it, there would be no escape. "Is there another way out?" he whispered urgently. Kate shook her head. "Not that I know of. The walls surround the entire garden. Then we go up." Marcus pointed to the old oak tree. Its thick branches stretched over the stone wall, extending into the wooded area beyond the estate's manicured grounds. "I can't climb that," Kate said, panic rising in her voice. "Not in this dress, you can. And you will." Marcus moved to the tree and cupped his hands. "I'll boost you up. Once you're in the branches, work your way to the other side of the wall. Stay low and move quietly." The voices were getting closer. Marcus could make out individual words now. "Check behind the old fountain. What about that shed near the east gate?" Kate grabbed the lowest branch and Marcus lifted her. She pulled herself up with surprising strength, her dress tearing slightly on the rough bark. She didn't stop. Marcus watched as she climbed higher, moving from branch to branch like she'd done it 100 times before. Maybe she had as a child, in happier times. Just as Kate reached the branch that extended over the wall, a beam of light swept across the ivy-covered entrance. Someone was right outside. "What's behind all this ivy?" a man's voice asked. "Probably nothing. Just old wall. Check it anyway." Marcus's heart hammered. In seconds, they'd push through and find him standing there. He couldn't climb fast enough to escape. And if they caught him helping Kate, both of them would be in danger. He made a decision. "Hey," Marcus shouted, stepping toward the entrance. "What are you doing out here?" A man in a dark jacket pushed through the gap, flashlight in hand. Marcus recognized him, Thomas, one of the estate's newer groundskeepers. Behind him was another man Marcus didn't know. Marcus. Thomas looked confused. "What are you doing in here?" "My job?" "Checking the property." Marcus kept his voice calm, authoritative. "What are you doing?" "Mr. Ashford sent us to look for Miss Hartwell. She's missing." "Missing? Or just went for a walk?" Marcus crossed his arms. "This is a private garden. She probably wanted some space. We have orders to search everywhere." The second man tried to push past Marcus, shining his flashlight into the garden. Marcus stepped into his path. "Let me see your security clearance." "My what?" "This is a restricted area. Family only. If Mr. Ashford wants it searched, he can come do it himself." Marcus pulled out his radio. "I'll call it in now." The man hesitated. Thomas put a hand on his shoulder. "Come on, Mike. She's not here anyway. Let's check the stables." But Mike wasn't convinced. He craned his neck, trying to see past Marcus into the garden. "Why are you being so difficult about this? Unless you're hiding something." Marcus's jaw tightened. "I'm doing my job, which is protecting the family's privacy. Now move along before I report both of you for a crack." Loud and sharp, everyone froze. High above them, Kate had shifted her weight onto a dead branch. It snapped under her, and she fell, for one terrible moment. Marcus thought she'd fall back into the garden, right in front of the men. But Kate grabbed another branch at the last second, swinging herself forward with momentum that carried her. Over the wall, she disappeared into the trees on the other side. But the damage was done. What was that? Mike pushed past Marcus, flashlight sweeping the garden. The beam caught the broken branch, still swaying where Kate had been seconds before. Thomas stepped in behind him, his eyes moving up to the oak tree. His expression changed. Someone was climbing. Recently. Mike turned to Marcus, suspicion hardening his features. "You said no one was here?" "Said I was checking the property." "You're lying?" Mike grabbed his radio. "Mr. Ashford, we've got something at the hidden garden. East wall. Looks like someone just climbed out." Ashford's voice crackled back immediately. Secure the area. I'm on my way. Marcus's mind spun. He had maybe 2 minutes before Ashford arrived. 2 minutes to decide whether to keep lying or tell the truth. 2 minutes to decide if he was willing to risk everything for a woman he barely knew. She was here, wasn't she? Thomas looked at Marcus with something like pity. Man, why would you help her? You're going to lose your job over this. Where did she go? Mike demanded. Marcus said nothing. He couldn't. Anything he said now would only make things worse for Kate. Footsteps pounded toward them. David Ashford appeared at the garden entrance, his face dark with fury. 2 more men flanked him, professional, cold-eyed, not groundskeepers. These men looked like private security. Maybe worse. Where is she? Ashford demanded. Marcus met his gaze steadily. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't play games with me, guard. Ashford stepped closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. You know exactly what I'm talking about. My cousin is mentally unstable. She's a danger to herself and others. By helping her, you're putting her life at risk. Funny, Marcus said quietly. That's not what she told me. Ashford's expression went cold. What did she tell you? Enough. The 2 men in suits moved forward, positioning themselves on either side of Marcus. One of them put a hand inside his jacket where a weapon might be holstered. Mr. Ashford, Thomas said nervously, maybe we should just call the police. Let them handle this. The police. Ashford laughed, but there was no humor in it. Yes, good idea. He pulled out his phone. I'll report that a delusional young woman grieving her brother's death has run off into the woods, and that our security guard, for reasons unknown, helped her escape and assaulted staff members who tried to stop him. I didn't assault anyone, not yet, but you will. Ashford nodded to the 2 men in suits. When you resist detainment, Marcus's blood ran cold. He understood now. Ashford wasn't just looking for Kate. He was eliminating anyone who might help her, anyone who might believe her story, and Marcus had just made himself a target. One of the suited men reached for him. Marcus took a step back, his hand moving to his own radio. If he could call this in to the main security office, get other guards here, but before he could press the button, something unexpected happened. A phone rang, Ashford's phone. He glanced at the screen, and for just a moment, his confident expression faltered. Excuse me, he said, turning away to answer. Morrison. This is unexpected. Marcus's heart leaped. Morrison, Kate's father's lawyer. The one person she trusted, she'd made the call. From his phone, she'd gotten through. Ashford's voice rose. What do you mean you're at the estate? No one authorized, he paused, listening. His face went pale. That's not necessary. I can explain, he turned back to Marcus. Fury and something else, fear, burning in his eyes. And that's when Marcus knew. Whatever Kate had told the lawyer was enough. The game had changed. Ashford ended the call with a sharp jab of his finger. His composure was cracking. The smooth, controlled mask he always wore was slipping. Change of plans, he said coldly to the 2 men in suits. Find the girl. Now, use whatever means necessary. The men nodded and disappeared into the woods beyond the wall. Thomas shifted uncomfortably. Mr. Ashford, I'm not sure I should be involved in, then leave. Ashford didn't even look at him. His eyes were locked on Marcus. You. Come with me. Am I under arrest? That depends on how cooperative you decide to be. Marcus followed Ashford back toward the main house, Mike trailing behind them. His mind raced. Morrison was here at the estate. That meant Kate had reached him. But it also meant she'd had to come back, or at least come close enough for the lawyer to meet her. She was still in danger. They entered the estate through a side door. Moving down a hallway Marcus rarely patrolled, the family's private wing, Ashford led him into a studied dark wood paneling, leather chairs. The smell of old books and expensive whiskey. An elderly man sat behind the desk. Kate's father, Richard Hartwell. He looked nothing like the robust businessman Marcus had seen in old photographs. Cancer had hollowed him out. His skin was gray, his breathing labored, but his eyes were still sharp. Richard Ashford said smoothly, his composure returning. I apologize for the disturbance. We've had a situation with Kate. I know. Richard's voice was weak but steady. Gerald Morrison just called me. He says Kate contacted him, claiming she's in danger. From you? Ashford spread his hands. As I've been trying to explain to everyone, Kate is not well. The grief over James, the stress of your illness, it's taken a severe toll on her mental health. She's been making wild accusations. What kind of accusations? That I'm somehow responsible for James's death. That I'm trying to control the family trust. It's paranoid delusion, Richard. You know how fragile she's been since Elizabeth died. Richard looked at Marcus. And you're the security guard who helped her? Yes, sir. Why? Marcus chose his words carefully. Because she was scared. And because nothing about this situation feels right. Asterisk. Nothing feels right. Ashford laughed. What would a security guard know about David? Richard held up a hand. Let him speak. Miss Hartwell showed me a bruise on her wrist. She said you grabbed her when she refused to sign some papers. She said you've been controlling her movements, taking her phone. Marcus kept his voice level. She said she thinks her brother's death wasn't an accident. And you believed her? Ashford's voice dripped with contempt. A hysterical girl tells you a conspiracy theory and you just accept it as fact. I believe she was terrified. That's a fact. Richard closed his eyes. For a moment, Marcus thought the old man had fallen asleep. But then he spoke, his voice barely a whisper. David, show me your hands. What? Your hands. Show me. Ashford hesitated, then held out his hands. His right knuckles were bruised, slightly swollen. How did that happen? Richard asked. I hit the wall. I was frustrated with Kate's behavior. You hit a wall. With enough force to bruise your knuckles like that? Yes. Richard opened his eyes and looked at his nephew. You're lying. I've known you since you were a boy, David. I can always tell when you're lying. The room fell silent. Ashford's jaw clenched. Richard, you're not thinking clearly. The medication? My mind is perfectly clear. Richard pressed a button on his desk. And I want answers. Real answers. The study door opened. Gerald Morrison entered, a thin man in his 60s with silver hair and sharp eyes. Behind him was a younger woman in a police uniform. But it wasn't just any officer. The nameplate on her uniform read Captain Rodriguez. And she looked at Ashford with an expression that made Marcus's stomach flip. This wasn't a social call, Richard Morrison said gently. I'm sorry to do this here. I know you're not well. But Kate gave me some very serious information, and we can't wait. I understand, Gerald. Please, continue. Morrison opened a briefcase and pulled out a folder. 3 days ago, James Hartwell died in what was ruled a single-vehicle accident. But this morning, Kate brought something to my attention. She'd found it hidden in James's room. He placed a small recording device on the desk. James started keeping an audio journal 2 weeks before his death. This is the last entry he made. The night before he died, Morrison pressed play. James's voice filled the room. Young scared? I don't know who to trust anymore. David's been pressuring me to sign documents I don't understand. He says it's for the family's benefit. But when I asked Dad's lawyer to review them, David went ballistic. He said I was betraying the family, that I was putting everyone at risk. Pause. Today he told me if I didn't cooperate, there would be consequences. The way he said it, it sounded like a threat. Another pause, longer this time. I'm going to talk to Dad tomorrow. Show him everything. But if something happens to me before then, if this goes wrong somehow, I want people to know. David isn't who everyone thinks he is. He's dangerous. And I think the recording cut off abruptly. The silence in the study was absolute. Richard's face had gone white. Where did Kate find this? Hidden in James's desk drawer, Morrison said quietly. In a false bottom she remembered from when they were children. Captain Rodriguez stepped forward. Mr. Ashford, I need you to answer some questions about your whereabouts on the night of November 18th. This is ridiculous. But Ashford's voice had lost its certainty. That recording proves nothing. James was stressed. He was imagining things. Then you won't mind explaining the financial records we found. Morrison pulled out more papers. Records showing that you've been systematically moving funds out of the family trust into offshore accounts. Nearly $3 million over the past 6 months? That's a lie. Bank records don't lie, David. Richard's voice was stronger now, fueled by anger. Is it true? Have you been stealing from us? Ashford's face twisted. For a moment, Marcus thought he might confess. But then something changed in his expression. The fear turned to something else. Something cold and calculating. Where's Kate? He asked suddenly. Safe, Morrison replied. Safe where? That's not your concern. Ashford laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. You think this is over? You think one recording and some bank statements are enough? He looked at each of them in turn. Rochard, Morrison, Rodriguez, Marcus. I have friends. Powerful friends. Lawyers who will tie this up in court for years. By the time it's resolved, Richard will be dead. And Kate will be... He stopped himself. But the implication hung in the air like poison. Captain Rodriguez's hand moved to her gun. Mr. Ashford, I'm placing you under arrest for embezzlement and suspicion if the lights went out. All of them. Every light in the estate, plunging the study into complete darkness. Stay calm, Rodriguez called out. Nobody move. But Marcus heard it. The sound of movement. Fast and purposeful. Heading toward the door. Ashford was running. And somewhere in the darkness, Marcus heard another sound. Distant, but growing closer. Screaming. A woman's scream. Kate's scream. Marcus didn't think. He ran through the darkness, following the sound of Kate's screams. Behind him, he heard Rodriguez shouting orders, Morrison calling for backup. But Marcus was faster. He knew this estate. Even in the pitch black, he could navigate these halls. The screaming came from the east wing. Near the hidden garden, Marcus burst through a side door into the cold night air. Emergency lights kicked on, bathing the grounds in harsh white light, and there, near the gap in the stone wall, he saw them. Kate was struggling against one of the men in suits. The second man was trying to force her toward a black SUV parked on the service road. Marcus shouted. The first man turned, pulling something from his jacket. A gun. Marcus dove behind a stone planter as a shot rang out. The bullet pinged off the stone inches from his head. He heard Kate scream again, heard her fighting. Stay down. Rodriguez's voice came from behind him. She was at the doorway, her own weapon drawn. Police, drop your weapons. But the men weren't police. They weren't bound by rules or protocol. The one holding Kate fired toward Rodriguez. Forcing her back into cover, the SUV's engine roared to life. They were going to take Kate, and if they got her in that vehicle, Marcus knew they'd never see her again. He looked around desperately. His security radio, his flashlight. Nothing useful. Nothing that could stop armed men. Then he saw it. The old iron gate that separated the formal gardens from the service area, it was held in place by a rusted chain, barely functional. If he could get to it, if he could release it, the gate was on a slope. It would roll. Marcus ran. Not toward Kate, but away, circling around through the darkness. Another shot rang out, but it went wide. The man holding Kate was dragging her toward the SUV, shouting to the driver. Marcus reached the gate and yanked on the chain. It was rusted solid. He pulled harder, feeling the metal bite into his palms. Come on, the chain snapped. The heavy iron gate, released from its anchor, began to roll down the slope. Slowly at first, then gaining momentum. 300 pounds of wrought iron rolling directly toward the SUV. The driver saw it too late. He slammed the vehicle into reverse, but the gate was faster. It crashed into the front of the SUV with a tremendous bang, crumpling the hood and shattering the windshield. The man holding Kate turned in shock. That moment of distraction was all she needed. She drove her elbow into his ribs, broke free, and ran straight toward Marcus. He caught her, pulling her behind cover as another shot fired. Are you hit? No, Marcus, they were going to. I know. Stay down. More vehicles were arriving now. Real police cars, their sirens wailing. Captain Rodriguez was coordinating her team surrounding the two men. The one with Kate had dropped his gun and was trying to run, but officers tackled him to the ground. Within minutes, it was over. Both men in custody. The SUV disabled. More officers were swarming the estate, searching for Ashford. Marcus and Kate sat on the stone steps near the hidden garden, both of them breathing hard. Kate's dress was torn, her face streaked with dirt and tears. But she was alive. How did they find you? Marcus asked. Asterisk, I was with Morrison in his car. We were coming back to the estate to meet with my father when the lights went out. I saw David running toward the east wing. Her voice broke. I thought he was going to hurt my father. So I got out of the car. I didn't think. I just ran. That was stupid. I know. She laughed, a half sob. But you came anyway. Yeah, that was stupid too. They sat in silence for a moment. Around them, police radios crackled. Officers moved through the grounds. Emergency lights painted everything in alternating red and blue. They're saying David got away, Kate said quietly. He's gone. Marcus nodded. He'd heard the same thing. Ashford had disappeared into the woods behind the estate. In the darkness and confusion, he'd slipped past the initial police perimeter. He'll come back, Kate whispered. He won't give up. Not with everything at stake. Maybe, but now everyone knows what he is. The police, your father, Morrison. You're not alone anymore. Kate looked at him. I wasn't alone. Even when I thought you were there. Before Marcus could respond, Morrison appeared at the top of the steps. Kate, your father wants to see you. She stood quickly. Is he okay? Physically, yes. But this has been quite a shock. He needs to know you're safe. Asterisk, Kate turned back to Marcus. Come with me? I'm just a security guard. This is family business. No. Kate's voice was firm. You're not just anything. You've saved my life. If my father wants to thank you, you're going to let him. Marcus followed them inside. The power was back on now, though several hallways were still dark. They made their way to Richard's study. The old man was still in his chair, but he looked even more frail than before. Katie, his voice cracked when he saw her. My girl. Kate ran to him, dropping to her knees beside his chair. She buried her face in his shoulder, and he stroked her hair with trembling hands. I'm sorry, Richard whispered. I'm so sorry. I trusted him. I let him into our lives. I let him he couldn't finish. It's not your fault, Dad. James is dead because of me. Because I was blind? We don't know that yet. The police will investigate. Kate pulled back, wiping her eyes. Dad, this is Marcus. He's the one who helped me. If it wasn't for him, Richard looked at Marcus. For a long moment, the old man just studied him. Then he extended a shaking hand. Thank you, he said simply, for protecting my daughter when I couldn't. Marcus shook his hand gently. Anyone would have done the same. No, most people would have followed orders. Stayed out of family business. You chose to help anyway, Richard coughed, a deep rattling sound. Gerald tells me you were threatened, that David's men were going to harm you. This doesn't matter now, it matters to me. Richard looked at Morrison. Gerald, I want this man compensated. Properly, he risked his life. Dad, we can talk about this later, Kate said gently. You need to rest. But Richard shook his head. There might not be a later. Not for me. He looked at Marcus again. You have family? A sister. In the city? She's in college. What's she studying? Engineering. But money's tight. She might have to drop out next semester. Richard nodded slowly. Not anymore. Gerald set up a trust. Full scholarship, all expenses. And I want Marcus on permanent security detail for Kate, not as a regular guard as her personal protection. Whatever salary that requires, pay it. Richard, you don't need to, Marcus started. Yes, I do. The old man's eyes were fierce despite his weakness. David is still out there, and even after the police catch him, there might be others. People he was working with. Kate needs someone she can trust? Absolutely. That's you. Kate looked at Marcus. Would you? I know it's asking a lot. But I'd feel safer knowing yes, Marcus said. I'll do it. What else could he say? Looking at Kate, remembering the terrified woman in the hidden garden just hours ago, now standing strong beside her dying father, he knew he couldn't walk away. Captain Rodriguez appeared in the doorway. Mr. Hartwell, we need to take your statements. All of you. And Kate, we found something in David's office. Something you need to see. The expression on Rodriguez's face made Marcus's blood run cold. They followed Rodriguez to David's office. A forensics team was already there, photographing documents, bagging evidence. On the desk sat a laptop, its screen still glowing. We found this hidden in a locked drawer, Rodriguez explained. He tried to wipe it remotely when he ran, but our tech guys recovered most of it. She turned the screen toward them. These are emails. Between David and a man named Vincent Price. Not his real name, we're working on his true identity. But from the context, he's some kind of ... facilitator. Marcus leaned closer. The email chain went back months. As he read, his stomach turned. The messages were coded, but not well. David had been planning this for almost a year. The accident that killed James wasn't an accident at all. It was a hit, carefully orchestrated. David had hired someone to tamper with James's car. A mechanic who knew exactly where to cut, exactly what would fail at high speed on a mountain road. Oh God, Kate whispered. She was reading over Marcus's shoulder, her hand gripping his arm for support. He murdered James. He actually murdered him. There's more, Rodriguez said grimly. She scrolled down. These emails from last week. He was planning something similar for you. The room went silent. Kate read the messages, her face going pale. He was going to make it look like suicide. He'd been documenting my deteriorating mental state for weeks. He had a doctor ready to testify that I'd been asking about sleeping pills, and then her voice broke. An overdose. He was going to kill me and make everyone think I'd killed myself out of grief. Richard made a sound, somewhere between a sob and a growl. That bastard. That goddamn bastard. I brought him into this family. I trusted him with everything. He would have gotten away with it too, Morrison said quietly. If Kate hadn't found James's recording, if she hadn't had the courage to run, if Marcus hadn't helped her, he looked at Marcus with something like, "You derailed an entire murder plot by simply believing her." Marcus didn't know what to say to that. He'd just been doing what felt right. Rodriguez closed the laptop. We have a PBs out across 3 states. David won't get far. And Vincent Price? Whoever he is, we'll find him too. This evidence is airtight. Everyone involved is going to prison for a very long time. What about the trust? Kate asked. The money David stole? Recoverable, Morrison said. Most of it, anyway. He hadn't had time to move it through enough channels yet. We can trace it. Richard nodded slowly. Gerald, I want new papers drawn up. Immediately, everything changes. The trust, the estate, all of it. Kate gets full control. And I want every legal protection in place. No one, no cousin, no distant relative, no business partner gets access without her explicit approval. Dad, I don't need to control everything. Yes, you do. Richard's voice was firm. You're the only one I can trust now. You and... He gestured vaguely at the room. These people who proved themselves tonight, Morrison, this officer. Marcus. He coughed again, harder this time. Mr. Hartwell. You should rest, Rodriguez said. We can finish this tomorrow. But Richard shook his head. I don't have many tomorrows left, Captain. I need to fix what I can while I still can. He looked at Kate. I failed your brother. I won't fail you too. Kate knelt beside him again, taking his hand. You didn't fail anyone. David fooled all of us. Not all of us. Richard looked at Marcus. You saw through him immediately. I didn't see through anything. I just listened to Kate, which is more than I did. The old man closed his eyes. Get him out of here, Gerald. Find David. Make sure he never threatens my daughter again. The next few hours were a blur. Statements to police. Questions from detectives. Morrison making phone calls to lawyers, accountants, anyone who'd had dealings with David. They found more evidence with each passing hour. Forged documents. fake invoices. A web of lies and theft that went deeper than anyone had imagined. By dawn, the full picture was clear. David had been systematically looting the family fortune for nearly a year. He'd used his position as trustee to create shell companies, fake vendors, phantom expenses, and when James started asking questions, David had him killed. When Kate started getting suspicious, he'd planned the same for her. It was almost noon when they finally found David. He'd made it to the Canadian border, driving through the night. But Border Patrol had already been alerted. When they pulled him over for a routine check, he ran. Led them on a chase that ended when his car crashed into a guardrail at 70 miles per hour. He survived, barely, but he'd lived long enough to stand trial. Kate cried when Rodriguez told her. Not tears of relief or joy, but something more complicated. Grief, maybe, for the man she'd thought her cousin was. Or maybe just exhaustion from carrying so much fear for so long. Marcus sat with her in the hidden garden while the sun rose over the estate. Neither of them had slept. They probably wouldn't for a while yet. My mother used to bring me here when things got hard, Kate said quietly. She'd say this place had a kind of magic to it, a safety that existed nowhere else. She looked at Marcus. Yesterday, when I was here crying, I thought that magic was gone, that nowhere was safe anymore. And now I think maybe the magic wasn't in the place. It was in having someone who would listen. Someone who wouldn't dismiss me or tell me I was imagining things. She wiped her eyes. You barely knew me. You risked everything. Why? Marcus thought about it. Because I have a sister who's about your age. And I thought, if she was ever in trouble like that, I'd want someone to help her, even if it cost them something. Kate smiled, the first real smile he'd seen from her. Your sister's lucky to have you. Yeah, well, now she gets to finish college, thanks to your dad. So I guess we're even. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the morning light filter through the oak tree's branches. In a few hours, there would be more police interviews, more lawyers, more decisions to make about the estate, the trust, the future of everything Richard had built. But for now, in this moment, there was just peace. Marcus? Kate said, Yeah, thank you. For seeing me, for believing me when no one else would. You don't have to thank me. I know, but I'm going to anyway. She stood, brushing dirt from her ruined dress. Come on, we should get back. My father will want updates, and I'm pretty sure Morrison's going to need your signature on about 1,000 legal documents. Marcus groaned. What did I get myself into? A job. A good one. With terrible hours and way too much drama. She held out her hand to help him up. Still interested? He took her hand and stood. Yeah, I'm still interested. As they walked back toward the main house together, Marcus thought about how strange life could be. Yesterday morning, he'd been a simple security guard, following a predictable routine. Now he was somehow part of a family's inner circle, witness to murder plots and midnight escapes, responsible for protecting someone who'd become more than just another face on the property. The hidden garden remained behind them, quiet and secret as always. But it had given up its most important secret that sometimes, when you need it most, help comes from the most unexpected places. And sometimes believing someone when they're scared and alone is the most important thing you can do. 3 months later, Richard Hartwell passed away peacefully in his sleep. Kate was with him at the end, holding his hand. The estate went to her, as he'd planned. The legal troubles with David continued, trials, hearings, appeals that would stretch on for years. But Kate faced it all with quiet strength. And Marcus was beside her every step of the way. No longer just a guard, but a trusted friend. Someone who'd proven, in the darkness of that November night, that courage sometimes means simply standing with someone when they need you most. The hidden garden still exists at Hartwell Estate. Kate goes there sometimes, when the world becomes too much. And she's never alone. Because some places aren't made to be faced in solitude. They're made to remind us that even in our darkest moments, there's always someone willing to stand in the gap between us and danger. Someone willing to listen. Someone willing to believe.